There are certain behaviors that seem harmless or even justified in the moment, expressing your needs, showing your feelings, demonstrating interest, but that systematically kill attraction in ways most women don't recognize until the damage is already done. These aren't obvious mistakes. They're subtle patterns that slowly drain the very connection you're trying to build. The painful truth is that many women engage in these behaviors thinking they're being authentic, vulnerable, or appropriately invested, never realizing they're systematically destroying attraction until they notice the distance growing and can't understand why. What makes these patterns particularly dangerous is that they feel justified when you're doing them. You have reasons, you're being honest, you're showing you care. But despite the good intentions, the effect on attraction is devastating. That's why these are lessons women learn too late. By the time you recognize the pattern and its impact, you've already lost relationships you cared about to behaviors you didn't realize were slowly killing the connection. Hi, I'm Gabriel Hart from My Daily Love, and in this video we'll talk about 7 attraction killers that seem innocent but systematically destroy connection. Attraction killer number 1, overexplaining your worth. The first attraction killer is overexplaining your worth, telling them why you're valuable instead of living it. Because men feel attraction when they discover your value, not when you explain it, and the very act of explanation undermines the value you're trying to communicate. Think of over-explaining your worth like announcing you're funny before telling a joke. The announcement itself undermines the claim. Actual humor demonstrates itself without announcement. Actual value demonstrates itself without explanation. Telling them why you're valuable instead of living it shows up in specific ways, listing your accomplishments unprompted, explaining why you're a good partner, defending your worth when it hasn't been questioned, justifying why they should want to be with you, or essentially building a case for why you're valuable rather than simply being valuable. Men feel attraction when they discover your value, not when you explain it. Discovery is engaging. It feels like they're uncovering something special on their own. Explanation is defending. It feels like you're trying to convince them of something they should see naturally if it were real. The very act of explanation communicates insecurity about the thing you're explaining. If you truly believed in your value, you wouldn't need to explain it. You'd simply live it and allow others to observe and appreciate it naturally. This pattern often comes from past experiences where your value wasn't recognized, leading you to believe you need to make it more obvious, more explicit, more clearly stated. But the opposite is true. The more you explain, the less believable the claims become. Quality people don't need your worth explained to them. They observe it through how you carry yourself, the standards you maintain, the life you've built, the way you treat others. All of this demonstrates value far more powerfully than any explanation ever could. The shift from explaining to embodying transforms the dynamic. When you stop trying to convince and simply be yourself with confidence, people either recognize your value naturally or they don't. And those who don't aren't your people anyway. From what I've seen, women who stop over-explaining their worth and simply live it with quiet confidence find that quality people recognize and appreciate them far more readily than when they were desperately trying to make their value clear through explanation. Attraction killer number 2, emotional reactivity to everything. Here's an attraction killer that's often confused with authenticity. Emotional reactivity to everything, not anger, but instability, where when every mood shift becomes a crisis, they start associating you with tension, not joy, because unpredictable emotional intensity creates exhaustion rather than connection. Think of emotional reactivity like a roller coaster that never stops. The first few loops might be exciting, but constant intensity becomes exhausting rather than exhilarating. People eventually crave stability over perpetual emotional upheaval, not anger specifically, but instability. It's not that you get angry sometimes, it's that your emotional state is unpredictable and dramatic. Small things trigger big reactions. Mood shifts are frequent and intense. Everything feels like it could become a crisis at any moment. When every mood shift becomes a crisis, they start associating you with tension, not joy. Their nervous system begins to expect drama. Being around you starts feeling like walking through a minefield where they're never sure what will trigger the next emotional explosion. This isn't about suppressing all emotions or being robotic. It's about emotional regulation, the capacity to feel things without every feeling becoming an event that everyone around you must participate in and manage. Emotional reactivity is exhausting for both people. For you, because you're constantly in emotional upheaval. For them, because they're constantly managing your emotional states, trying to prevent reactions, walking on eggshells to maintain peace. The pattern often stems from never learning healthy emotional regulation, either from family systems where emotions were suppressed entirely or from systems where they were dramatically expressed without filters. Neither extreme teaches healthy emotional processing. Attraction requires some level of emotional predictability. Not that you're always happy or never upset, but that your emotional responses are generally proportional to situations and that you can process emotions without requiring others to constantly manage your state. The shift from reactivity to regulation doesn't mean becoming emotionless. It means developing the capacity to feel emotions, process them internally when appropriate, and express them proportionally to the situation when expression is needed. Now, I need to be honest about something you might not want to hear, but absolutely need to understand. Emotional regulation isn't a skill you magically develop by trying to be calmer. It requires learning how your nervous system works, how your triggers operate, and how to soothe your internal world before you pour it into someone else. Because without this inner mastery, you'll keep confusing emotional intensity with emotional depth and accidentally sabotaging the very connection you're trying to build. The challenge isn't just understanding that constant reactivity kills attraction. It's learning how to feel and process emotions without making your emotional state the constant focus of the relationship, expressing feelings when appropriate while also having capacity to self-regulate, being emotionally honest without being emotionally overwhelming. Most women either suppress all emotions to avoid seeming too much, which prevents genuine intimacy and creates resentment from unexpressed feelings that eventually explode, or they express every emotional shift immediately and intensely, essentially outsourcing all emotional regulation to their partner and making the relationship exhausting rather than connecting. Understanding how to process emotions internally when appropriate while also expressing them proportionally when needed, maintaining emotional honesty without emotional chaos. Being real without being reactive is crucial because men are attracted to women who have emotional depth without emotional instability. The difference between women who successfully express emotions in ways that create intimacy and those who either suppress everything or overwhelm with reactivity often comes down to specific emotional regulation skills. Comment reactive, and I'll reveal the 3 ways to express emotions authentically without overwhelming versus the 3 patterns that either suppress feelings into resentment or dump emotions into exhaustion. Attraction killer number 3. Treating their attention like a trophy. What if one of the fastest ways to kill attraction is treating their attention like a trophy? When every text becomes a reward, they feel pressure, not connection. Because men stay when attention feels natural, not celebrated, and over-celebrating their basic presence communicates that you rarely receive attention worth celebrating. Think of attention as trophy, like making a huge celebration every time someone does something completely normal. It makes the normal thing feel like a massive achievement, which is either exhausting, because you expect celebration for basic actions, or revealing, because it shows you rarely receive this achievement. When every text becomes a reward, responding with excessive enthusiasm to basic contact, treating normal interactions like massive events, celebrating their basic presence like it's a rare gift, they feel pressure, not connection. The pressure comes from the weight you're placing on their basic actions. A simple text isn't just a text. It's an event worthy of excitement and gratitude. This makes normal interaction feel heavy and significant rather than easy and natural. Men stay when attention feels natural, not celebrated. When your presence in their life is pleasant but not a huge deal, when texts are nice but not life events, when seeing each other is enjoyable but not treated like a massive occasion, that ease creates sustainable attraction. The over-celebration communicates something you don't intend, that their attention is so rare and valuable because you rarely receive it. It signals low value rather than high value. If you were regularly experiencing quality attention, this particular attention wouldn't warrant such celebration. This pattern often comes from scarcity mindset around attention and connection. When you're starved for attention, any attention feels precious and worthy of excessive response. But that excessive response is what creates the pressure that drives quality people away. The shift from celebration to natural appreciation transforms the dynamic. When you appreciate their presence without making it the most important thing in your world, when you respond warmly but proportionally, when attention feels like pleasant normalcy rather than rare treasure, attraction can develop naturally without pressure. Quality people are drawn to those who appreciate them without making them responsible for their entire emotional state or treating their basic presence like an overwhelming gift that must be celebrated excessively. Attraction killer number 4, making them your emotional center too fast. The fourth attraction killer is making them your emotional center too fast. Sharing all your wounds early doesn't create closeness. It creates emotional responsibility they never agreed to, because intimacy develops gradually through earned trust, not through premature vulnerability dumps that create obligation rather than connection. Think of emotional centering like making someone your therapist before they've agreed to be even a friend. You're downloading emotional responsibility onto them before the relationship foundation can support that weight. Sharing all your wounds early, trauma, past relationship damage, family dysfunction, deep insecurities, ongoing struggles, doesn't create closeness the way many women believe it will. Instead, it creates emotional responsibility they never consented to. It creates emotional responsibility they never agreed to because now they know your deepest wounds and struggles, which makes them feel obligated to handle you carefully, manage your triggers, be responsible for your healing. That's too much weight too fast. This is often confused with vulnerability, which is considered crucial for intimacy. But there's a difference between appropriate vulnerability that develops naturally as trust builds and premature oversharing that dumps emotional responsibility on someone who barely knows you. Intimacy develops gradually. Early stages are about discovering compatibility, enjoying each other's company, building trust through small interactions. Deep wounding and trauma sharing comes later, after trust is established through consistent positive experience. When you make someone your emotional center too fast, you're essentially saying, I barely know you, but I'm going to make you responsible for understanding and managing my deepest psychological wounds. That's not intimacy, that's burden. The pattern often stems from confusion about what creates connection. Many women believe that sharing deep vulnerability early will fast-track intimacy and make them feel special to you, but it actually creates distance because it's too much too soon. Quality people want to get to know you gradually. They want to earn your deeper trust over time. They want intimacy to develop naturally rather than having your entire psychological history dumped on them in early interactions before they've agreed to that level of emotional involvement. The shift from premature oversharing to gradual appropriate vulnerability allows intimacy to develop naturally at a pace both people can handle, creating genuine closeness rather than overwhelming obligation. Attraction killer number 5. Losing your rhythm when you like them. The fifth attraction killer is losing your rhythm when you like them. Canceling plans, rearranging your schedule, pausing hobbies where they notice the subtle loss of self and attraction drops quietly because the independence that attracted them initially disappears the moment you become interested. Think of losing your rhythm like a musician who stops playing their instrument the moment someone expresses interest in their music. The very thing that created attraction disappears, replaced by focus on the person rather than the passion. Canceling plans, rearranging your schedule, pausing hobbies, all the things that made your life full and interesting suddenly become negotiable or abandoned when they enter the picture. Your previously full calendar suddenly has endless availability for them. They notice the subtle loss of self. You were interesting, busy, engaged with life when they met you. But the moment you liked them, all of that disappeared and they became your primary focus. That shift is noticeable and concerning, and attraction drops quietly. It's not dramatic or obvious. They don't announce, I'm less attracted because you cancelled your life for me. But something shifts. The energy changes. The dynamic feels different. The attraction that was building starts to fade. This happens because the independence, fullness, and passion that attracted them initially disappears the moment you become interested. The person they were drawn to, someone with their own life, goals, interests, and priorities, gets replaced by someone whose life revolves around them. The pattern comes from the belief that showing you're willing to prioritize them demonstrates care and interest, but it actually demonstrates lack of boundaries and loss of self, both of which reduce attraction rather than increasing it. Quality people don't want you to abandon your life for them. They were attracted to someone with a full, interesting life. They want to be added to that life, not become the replacement for it. The shift from abandoning your rhythm to maintaining it while making space for them creates sustainable attraction. You keep your plans, hobbies, and priorities while also creating time for developing connection, showing you're interested while also showing you have a self-worth maintaining. From what I've seen, maintaining your rhythm while dating is one of the most powerful things you can do for attraction because it demonstrates you have a life they're being invited into rather than an empty life they're expected to fill. Attraction killer number 6. Turning curiosity into control. The sixth attraction killer is turning curiosity into control. The innocent check-ins like, "Who were you with?" and "Why didn't you text back?" where men read this as mistrust, not intimacy, because curiosity is sexy but surveillance is not, and the line between them is thinner than most women realize. Think of curiosity versus control like the difference between being interested in someone's life and monitoring their behavior. One feels like connection, the other feels like supervision. The innocent check-ins seem reasonable on the surface. "Who were you with? Why didn't you text back? Where are you right now? What are you doing?" These questions feel like staying connected, showing interest, wanting to be part of their life, but men read this as mistrust, not intimacy. The frequency and urgency of the questions signal that you're tracking their movements and availability, not genuinely curious about their experiences. It feels like being monitored rather than being known. Curiosity is sexy. "How was your night with friends?" asked later with genuine interest in their experience is very different from "Who were you with?" asked immediately when they resurface. The first is connection. The second is surveillance. Surveillance is not attractive. When someone feels monitored, tracked, or required to constantly report their whereabouts and activities, they feel controlled rather than cared for. The pressure to constantly update you becomes burden rather than connection. The line between curiosity and control is thinner than most women realize. It's in the timing, frequency, and energy of the questions. Occasional, genuine interest in their life is curiosity. Constant need to know where they are and who they're with is control. This pattern often stems from anxiety about the relationship or past experiences with betrayal, but projecting that anxiety through controlling behavior onto a new person who hasn't earned that mistrust is what kills attraction. Quality people want partners who trust them until given specific reason not to, not partners who treat them with suspicion from the beginning and require constant reporting to feel secure. The shift from surveillance to genuine curiosity means asking about experiences because you're interested in their life, not because you're tracking their behavior. It means trusting unless given reason not to, rather than requiring proof of trustworthiness through constant reporting. Attraction killer number 7, trying to secure him instead of experience him. Okay, so the final attraction killer is trying to secure them instead of experience them. Rushing labels, over-defining the connection, pushing future talk where it shifts the energy from exploration to obligation, because men fall in love when they feel freedom, not finishing lines. Think of securing versus experiencing like the difference between enjoying a vacation and trying to permanently relocate there on day 2. One allows natural appreciation, the other creates pressure that ruins the experience. Rushing labels, over-defining the connection, pushing future talk, all attempts to secure commitment before the foundation has been built to support it. What are we? Where is this going? I need to know if this is serious. All pressure for definition before enough experience has happened to know what should be defined. It shifts the energy from exploration to obligation. Early stages should feel like discovery. Getting to know each other, seeing if compatibility exists, enjoying the process of connection developing. But pressure for commitment transforms that exploration into obligation and timeline pressure. Men fall in love when they feel freedom, not finishing lines. When the relationship feels like something they're choosing freely because they want to, not something they're being pushed toward with urgency and deadlines, genuine feelings can develop. This pattern often stems from anxiety about uncertainty or past experiences where lack of early definition led to wasted time. But the solution to past uncertainty isn't rushing current definition, it's developing better discernment about character and consistency early on. Quality people want to feel they're choosing you freely, not being pressured into commitment before they're ready. The freedom to choose at their own pace, combined with your high standards that ensure their choice must be demonstrated through consistent positive treatment, creates the conditions for genuine commitment rather than pressured obligation. The shift from securing to experiencing means being present in the actual relationship as it develops rather than constantly focusing on where it's going. It means enjoying the process while maintaining standards about treatment, allowing commitment to develop naturally when both people feel ready rather than forcing premature definition. From what I've seen, the relationships that last are those where commitment developed naturally when both people were ready, not those where one person pressured the other into commitment before the foundation was built to support it.